Last Thursday, the Democrats forced through a last-minute amendments to S481, also known as the Automatic Voter Registration Bill. The far-reaching change was introduced right before the Senate Budget Committee was about to vote on the bill. Originally, S481 would have automatically registered eligible voters anytime they went to visit a motor vehicle office, unless they opt out. The last-minute amendment drastically changed the bill. Now, under S481, state agencies, from the MVC to the poll roll board, would automatically register any potentially eligible voter that they collected from, information from. The Democrats want to spend millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, on something that 92% of people are already registered to vote. According to the U.S. Census and the State Division of Elections, up to 92% of eligible voters in New Jersey are already registered to vote. We know that voter turnout is an issue. The data shows that voter registration, however, is not. So why are we spending this type of money? The motor voter bill that was vetoed last session would have cost $1 million to implement and $400,000 a year to maintain. And that was focusing on only one agency. So now think about this price tag that's amplified across potentially 18 state agencies, and with systems that don't currently, computer systems that don't currently talk to each other. Is this really a good use of taxpayer dollars? Of course not. So why are the Democrats spending so much money on a bad bill when they won't even fully fund property tax relief for our residents? In a state with the highest property taxes in the country, we simply can't afford to play political games with taxpayer money. And that's why I strongly oppose this legislation.
This is part of a package of bills that do some things that are clearly unnecessary. There's a bill that permits people on parole and on probation to vote. These are people who have not paid their debt to society, but the Democrats believe that they should be entitled to vote as well. $1 billion Phil Murphy, and we give him that name because he's now the tax and spend governor, $1 billion Phil, is now going to spend millions on registering people to vote who have not asked to register to vote. Now think about this. They also want to give licenses to everyone, whether they're here legally or illegally. And that means someone who's here illegally, who is not eligible to vote, will be automatically eligible to vote and will have to opt out. You know, this is what happens when you have a tax and spend governor. You look for another reason to spend money, and I think it's a big mistake, and I think you should give that money back to taxpayers.
Voter fraud in New Jersey is real. It happens more than you know. I happen to be from Passaic County. I was the Passaic County clerk from 2010 to last year, and during that time we had two major incidents of voter fraud. The first was in 2010, where 14 people were ultimately arrested and charged. It took them 4 years to arrest them. The last 2 years, we had a year-long voter fraud trial, where even during this trial, it was two candidates that sued each other. The AG involved in the case acknowledged that the voter fraud in this incident was real. Expanding voter registration without increasing staffing will undoubtedly cause overworked employees and understaffed agencies to let instances of voter fraud slip through the cracks. It's no secret that the lack of efficiency at state agencies is a huge problem. Do we really want to make changes that will lead to voter fraud or make wait times even longer? There's dangers of duplicative registration. Adding all these state agencies to the list of places you can register increases the risk of duplicative registration. What's the safeguard to prevent people who move from a different county from going to another state office where someone could register them to vote again? There's verification issues. State employees are often discouraged from asking a person about their immigration status, but non-citizens that go to a state agency to get help, how do you verify if someone is actually eligible to vote if you can't ask about their residency status? And during that last trial with the Patterson Council race, they made a decision not to ask that question during the year-long trial, knowing that there were people that had voted that were not eligible to vote. Those votes were cast. They were never able to pull them back. There's also issues with the signature pad. And as the county clerk, it was something we had to deal with. I think most of you know that when you go to the store and you pay with your credit card and you sign, you scribble. You're not giving a good signature like you would on paper. Not every state agency has signature pads, so that would be a problem as well.
Some question whether or not there is voter fraud, et cetera. I was at a meeting last night in Old Bridge where the Republican chair pointed out in 3 recent elections they found voter fraud. Voter fraud sufficient in 2 of the cases to reverse the results from what they should be. Thus, when they brought it to light, the election results were turned around. In an effort, a similar bill to this was presented last year, and Governor Christie vetoed it. He suggested the bill should have been labeled the voter fraud bill. In an effort to prevent voter fraud, I'll make a motion today to amend the bill on the Senate floor so that it's in the best interest of New Jersey voters and the taxpayers. The amendments will add language to the bill that would enact stronger penalties for voter fraud so that people or organizations that break the law are punished accordingly. Voter fraud would be increased from a 3rd-degree crime to a 2nd-degree crime. If New Jersey Democrats are going to insist on pushing through such a terrible piece of legislation, the least they can do is add language to the bill that would enact a stronger penalties for voter fraud so that people or organizations that break the law are punished accordingly. The second portion of the amendment will tackle the ballooning cost of this legislation by eliminating the other state agencies that were added by the last-minute amendment pushed through the Budget Committee last week. The third portion of the amendment would add explicit language to the legislation that would require potentially eligible voters to acknowledge they are, in fact, eligible to vote. They would also have to acknowledge that if they are not eligible to vote, they will face stiff penalties for committing voter fraud. This is significantly different from the section that says the substitute provides that if a person who is not entitled to vote becomes registered to vote pursuant to the bill, that person's registration will be presumed to have been affected with official authorization, and the person will not be deemed to have committed a crime. However, this presumption does not apply to a person who knowingly and willfully makes a false statement. Well, again, if they're having to indicate on the form that, they know what's required to be a citizen, to be a voter, and they've certified to it, then they certainly shouldn't have a presumption of being innocent. Additionally, we are requesting that they insert a checkoff box for a person to check off if they are a registered voter already. Otherwise, everybody that goes to motor vehicles or any of these other agencies, this information is going to be sent along every time they go. And that's going to be a lot of wasted effort and et cetera, and increase the cost tremendously. To be clear, that means anyone who's being automatically registered must physically acknowledge that they are a citizen, they are at least 18 years old, and they are not currently incarcerated or on parole. Those are the current standards, and that must be met under the law. It's a simple verification method that will protect the system from voter fraud.